What was the last thing Jesus said before he died? Oh, that's a shocker. The best way to start a video is to ask what Jesus said just before he died? But what if all of our religious language was borrowed from the world of money and marketing? And what if the world of money and marketing started to borrow and co-opt religious language that used to fit the niche of religion, but's now become the byword of leadership and entrepreneurial adventures?
Your goal is to be the largest online, and you are, retailer in the world. Beyond that, what's the goal?
Well, our mission is Earth's most customer-centric company.
But I don't know what that means.
Well, I'll give you an example. We want other companies to look at Amazon and see us as a standard bearer for obsessive focus on the customer, as opposed to obsessive focus on the competitor.
Have you noticed what's going on? People in leadership and entrepreneurship are borrowing and co-opting language that's traditionally thought of as religious and using it to explain their moral compass, their drive, their mission, vision, and values, their why.
Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do.
And today, everyone is discovering their why, thanks to Simon Sinek. And whether they're an organization, a startup, a bakery, a coffee shop, they all want to express what they just have to do, the kind of things that people have to do, like we need air to breathe, they need to capture in their mission, vision, and value statements.
And I thought deeply about this, and I ended up concluding that the worst thing that could possibly happen as we get big and we get a little more influence in the world is if we change our core values and start letting it slide. I can't do that. I'd rather quit.
They've all discovered a moral compass, and they use phrases like, we're missionaries, not mercenaries, for all their value-driven, not just profit-driven devotion to help their community.
But the core values are the same. And we come into work wanting to do the same thing today as we did 5 or 10 years ago, which is build the best products for people. You know, there's nothing that makes my day more than getting an email from some random person in the universe who just bought an iPad over in the UK and tells me the story about how it's the coolest product they've ever brought home, you know, in their lives. That's what keeps me going. And it's what kept me going 5 years ago. It's what kept me going 10 years ago when the doors were almost closed. And it's what will keep me going 5 years from now, whatever happens.
New entrepreneurs are borrowing the language and imagery that used to be the purview of missionaries. But missionaries, they're not borrowing the language of marketing and money. What was the last thing Jesus said before he died? Yes, John 19, it is finished. It's a really common word. It's a synonym for the phrase paid in full. And its most common usage was in law and in the marketplace. And I'm a big fan of helping religious organizations, nonprofits, and individuals raising support to getting ready to do good, to accomplish the change that we need in our world. And yet I think they can do so much more if they will learn to embrace the real world of marketing and money.
Yeah, what can I do for you, Rod? You just tell me, what can I do for you?
It's a very personal, very important thing. Hell, it's a family motto.
Are you ready, Jerry?
I'm ready.
Just want to make sure you're ready, brother.
Here it is. Show me the money.
So today I want to share with you my take on money and mission and how it can help you in your business, your startup, or your fundraising. And I want to share some excerpts from a webinar that I gave to would-be missionaries who were trying to discover their audience, raise support, and figure out a way to talk about money without being embarrassed, without feeling greedy or guilty.
Jerry, you better yell! Show me the money!
So let's get started. Hi, I'm James Callahan, and this is the Do-Over Show, where we learn that after we try it everyone else's way, we might have to try it a new way. Once upon a time, they were called missionaries, usually motivated by altruism, faith, sacrifice. But today, these people are called entrepreneurs. Just like you, blazing your own trail, taking risks, believing in your mission, convinced the world needs that special someone that only you can give them.
Stay on your game and keep going for your dreams, because the world needs that special gift that only you have.
And all the money you need to accomplish this will magically be attracted to you because you're special. But that's not the real world. And that's not how money works today. And people in the world of entrepreneurship and leadership are starting to understand this. One of the most successful venture capitalists of the mission-driven world of investments is a man named John Doerr. And he takes the ideas gleaned from Randy Komisar's book, The Monk and the Riddle, to give us this contrast.
The best ventures have these key success factors. They absolutely have A-plus passionate founders. They're committed to technical and market excellence. They're serving large, fast-growing markets. They have a reasonable approach to their financings. They have a sense of urgency. But most of all, for our sensibilities, they are missionaries, not mercenaries.
So let's dive into some deeper discussion that I offered to my would-be missionary friends about what it is that in marketing and money they need to understand better in order to be successful. And that gets me to the subject of money. And that is that I have an old friend who early in my time asked me to look up everything I could in the Bible about money. And we got together about a week later and he said, "Did you do it?" And I said, "No, I really didn't take it seriously. I figured there's just a little bit here and there." And he said, "Okay, we're done talking today. When you do the simple thing of looking up what's in the Bible about money, we can talk again." And I said, "Wait a minute, why are you shutting me down? Just tell me." And he said, "Because there's more in the Bible about money than heaven and hell combined. And getting that right will be a better indicator of where you stand, how you live, and who you are." Well, funding and money and giving and generosity and receiving are all tied up in one of the easiest and most common indicators. Most of the words that we use, and the Bible uses to describe salvation, are marketplace terms, or they have to do with accounting or auditing. Things like redemption means to buy back. Reconciliation means that you balance debits and credits. Forgiveness means you release somebody from a debt. And we've obviously co-opted the word save into a monetary term, but it means to rescue or deliver, and it was also used in common marketplace terms like, can you buy me a loaf of bread and save my family? That is, even the ordinary words we use to describe what it is that we call this life of salvation, the words about money are really at the heart of it. And we tend to separate them because we think of money bad, Jesus good, and we don't see them going together very much. And I know you've heard from other people more about this. Individual givers increased, that is, everybody giving $5 for this, $10 for that. Individual givers increased, which is like a funnel within marketing where you think, where's my next giver going to be? Who could she be? Where am I going to find her? They put their hand up all the time. They're like, here's $5, and that's them waving at you saying, I'm interested enough, you've got my attention long enough for me to give you $5, for me to trust you enough that I'll risk $5 giving it to you. And that's when a relationship begins. And it's at that point where you get people to raise their hand and just say, yeah, I'm interested. And they do it with money. Then you develop that relationship or cultivate it. And I'm sure you've heard these words and I'm sure you've dealt with this before. I mean, something that is important enough to someone, to them, that they want to read it, or they see themselves reading it, or they feel themselves in the story, or they find something about themselves in the story by using the story. Here's an example. Most newsletters people share are all about them, which is why your mother is the only person who probably reads it, and mom probably lies when she says she reads the whole thing. Most newsletters are about us, but we're not the audience. We're not the reader. It's got to be news for them, which means it's got to be something important to them that they want to read, because I'm asking them to engage with something and to become part of this community, this larger than life community. Okay, one of the things I love to do is remind people that if you're going for 6 months or a year, it's a breeze to raise money. If you're going for 5 years or long-term or 10 years, open-ended, it's really difficult to raise money. I can do anything. I'll give somebody $20 for 5 months. No biggie. But to give somebody that money for $100 for every year, every month, is a much more difficult ask, and it's a higher threshold to cross that really requires a serious relationship to get that kind of commitment. The other part of the fundraising thing is when you look at who you are going to talk to, what is their age group? And this gets back to that breakdown of the chart I showed you before. When a 25-year-old, I'm not picking on you, I'm just saying, if you're 25 years old and you think, oh, all my friends are really going to be into this, they fall into the under 35 age group for charitable giving. And they give just under or less than 4% of all money that's given annually. So if that is your primary audience, you will have a more difficult time than someone who has a bunch of friends who are 70 years old. Because when you get to 11% of giving comes from 35 to 44-year-olds. From 45 on is when the serious giving really kicks in. Why? Because houses are paid off, student loans are paid off, kids are gone, or at least somewhat self-sufficient, even though you're probably paying their phone bill still. But you get 45, and then 55 to 64, 22% of giving. 46%, I'll look into the camera seriously, squint my eyes, make a gesture to make sure you understand this. 46% of all giving comes from people who are age 65 and older. If you add together those last three groups, that accounts for 85% of all giving comes from people who are age 45 and older. Giving is also receiving. It's not a sacrifice. Giving creates community, and it solves problems. Now, you know the body metaphor of Paul in 1 Corinthians 12, how lesser parts are greater parts. It uses this phrase, and it says God gives greater prominence, gives this gift of greater prominence to the lesser members of the body in order that there may be this completeness, so that they would have a sense together or an identity or a community together, whereas in normal terms, lesser parts and greater parts would be valued differently. So God gives in order to adjust and create the body metaphor. Giving expresses our identity. So you have time but don't have money. There are people that you're going to talk to that have money but don't have time. So giving is not a matter of guilt, but it's giving what resources God gives you and sharing those resources. So if God gives somebody money but not time, we can't badmouth them or look down on them saying, well, I'm wonderful because I'm serving, and the least you can do is give me a little bit of your money. Instead, we give what God gives us. And Paul will tell the Corinthians in 2 Corinthians, you give according to your means, not beyond them. That is, whatever it is God has given you, that's how you give. So the idea is that giving expresses identity. It expresses our best self, who we really are, or who we want to be. There's a marketer named Seth Godin. You might know about him if you just Google the name Seth, S-E-T-H. He's the first hit on Google that shows up. What giving does is it creates a community, or as he puts it, marketing in a sentence is this: people like us do things like this. And then you get into Philippians in chapter 4, and Paul says, you Philippians indeed know in the early days of the gospel when I left Macedonia, no church shared with me in the matter of giving and receiving except you alone. That's that giving and receiving relationship. For even when I was in Thessalonica, you sent help for my needs more than once. That is, you sent multiple gifts, not just when your pledge card said you would. Not that I seek the gift, but what does he seek? I seek the profit it accumulates or gives to you. When people give, they get something of greater value than the cost of what it is they give. That's the value exchange. So when we ask people, for example, we're all very comfortable to ask people, hey, can you pray for me? But you drop that R out of the word pray and ask people to pay for you, and all of a sudden, there's that thing in your stomach that just seizes up, and you're like, I can't ask that. Paul says, when I get money from people, it's to their benefit that they're giving money. It helps them. It is a gift when you ask somebody to support the work that's going to be involved in, that your life is going to be tied up with. Let me encourage you to do this. Whenever you're thinking through, okay, what are the words I use to talk about money and how do I communicate? I would encourage you to go back time and time again to 2 Corinthians 8 and 9 and start at the end of chapter 7 and talk about and see how what Paul says. Now, the Corinthians have made an agreement that they would take up a collection that would, when Paul passes through, the second missionary trip of Paul is a fundraising trip. For who? For the church in Jerusalem. Why? Because of the economic conditions. And he went through Corinth. Corinth is a Roman free city. People have money, there are banks. So Paul said, you have this income. I want you to agree, come up with an idea, and you tell me how much, and that's your pledge. And then Paul says, now it's time to fulfill your pledge. I'm calling in. You said you would raise this money. But he doesn't guilt them. Instead, he starts by complimenting them. You excel in everything, Paul says. You are awesome, off the charts, impressive, and guess what? I tell everybody about you. You are so awesome. You are so generous. It is amazing. One of the most powerful ways you can get other people to think of giving to you is to tell stories of people who give to you. And he says, you excel in everything. We also want you to excel in this generous undertaking. He compliments them. He boasts about them. He brags about them. He tells them that he tells other people about them. That puts good pressure on people, not manipulative or harsh pressure on people. It gives them a chance to say, yeah, that's who I am. It rewards good behavior. That's not the way you talk to real people. That's the way you talk to us, like a test to see if you qualify. And that makes everybody in the office happy. But again, we're not writing you a check. And remember, no money, no mission. You can have the greatest why in the world, and you need this service like you need air to breathe, but unless you have money to do it, it ain't gonna happen. I hope this look into money and mission has been helpful. And could you please tap the like button? It really helps. And come back every Monday and Friday for more of The Do-Over Show. I'm so glad you found me, and I found you. Thanks.